This week we're going to be working on tall tales. Tall tales are stories that all of you, I would say, have heard of before. If any of you have heard of Paul Bunyan, that's probably the most famous example of a tall tale, at least for us here in Minnesota, since that's where some of his story takes place. Some things that make a story a tall tale is the fact that a tall tale is usually a funny story with exaggerations. If you remember, we studied hyperbole when we did figurative language, and hyperboles are exaggerations. So there's many exaggerations in tall tales as well. Um, Another thing that makes a story a tall tale is that the main character is a hero or heroine and is often is based on a real person. So that sometimes shows up in tall tales as well. Another thing that makes a story a tall tale is that the hero has superpower or superhuman strength and skills. As we know, Paul Bunyan, with his massive size, humans don't get that big. Another thing that makes it a tall tale is that the hero has to fight a bully or outwit a bully in the form of nature, a machine, or a group of people. And that's usually who the main character has to fight in a tall tale. And the last thing that makes a story a tall tale is that the hero may have a helper that might be an animal or an object. Example with Paul Bunyan is Babe the Blue Ox. Paul Bunyan will be getting to later on this week as an activity. Also, Casey Jones might be one that you've heard of as well. But for today, I'm going to be reading a tall tale called Febold Feboldson. You'll listen to me read this story, and then you will be filling out a graphic organizer using text boxes on a seesaw activity that will be sent out to you tomorrow. So I will be reading a tall tale called Febold Feboldson. Febold Feboldson came from Sweden. He settled on the Great Plains of Nebraska. He wanted to be a farmer. And this is kind of based in real life in the fact that many immigrants settled in the Midwest. They came here to the Northeast. Northeast was already packed, so those people kept moving further and further west, looking for a place to make a homestead. And a lot of times, immigrants were the ones who were doing that. The wide open spaces were empty. Febold had no one to talk to. People passed by him on their way to California. They were looking for gold. Also, that part is a true story as well. You've all heard of the gold rush before. Febold sent for 1,000,000 crates of oranges from California. He scattered them across the plains. So this is the exaggeration part. Would one person like this order 1,000,000 crates of oranges? Doesn't seem very likely. Gold, he shouted at the covered wagons. The homesteaders saw the oranges sparkling in the sun. They thought they had found real gold. They stayed for a while and got comfortable. This is when how it talks about how the hero or the main character has to um, outwit or outsmart someone. He's outwitting the people who are trying to get to California by fooling them into thinking oranges are gold. Later, they found out that the oranges weren't gold and not even from Nebraska. There was no water for their crops either. They started to complain. Febold had a plan to keep his new friends from leaving him. He set 1,000 fires all around the state. The smoke formed rain clouds that watered the crops on every farm in Nebraska. Febold saved the day. Again, this is another exaggeration, much like him ordering 1,000,000 crates of oranges. So this is the tall tale called Febold Feboldson. Uh, I went over some of those features that make it a tall tale. What you will do is you will answer the questions on the graphic organizer, then you can relate it to this story when you do that. And that is it for the story.